Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
I got nothing because I don't like to watch scary movies, so I'm not like the most festive person on Halloween.
Well, we had some trick-or-treaters and stuff, so it was a lot of fun. Of course, didn't see many comic book characters this year. Come to think of it, I had a couple Hulk. I had one Hulk. I had a Black Panther. But then everything else was, some of the more classics. So, and with a few ninjas thrown in. So yeah, I don't know if it was just a down year for maybe as people say, the down year for phase 4. I don't know if it's translated over to Halloween because the kiddo, maybe the parents are just like, I'm kind of sour on Marvel. But thankfully, we have Loki season 2, which is hopefully righting the ship, because this week definitely was a great episode that I know we'll be getting into here shortly.
You always do that. I hope the listeners know exactly what I mean when you say that, because you always have a good segue into a topic of discussion, and then you're like, but we're not going to talk about it now. And I'm like, well, wait a second. Why can't we?
Well, we can jump right on in. I'm fine to do so.
I don't mind talking about the heart of the TVA, Loki season 2, episode 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, Will. Well, since you brought it up, what did you think of this episode?
Oh, as I told you with the cliffhanger, since this is a spoiler review, I felt like it was a mini Infinity War with that ending.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just a touch. Yeah, I am glad I did not I wasn't a lucky chosen who got the screeners, because they just got the first 4 episodes, and it was confirmed that the only scenes in the original trailers were from those first 4 episodes. So people who got the screeners could watch 1 through 4, be stuck with that ending, and couldn't even go back to the trailers at that point to figure out what hadn't they seen.
Yeah. Now, it's funny about that as far as with the screeners, and I know we'll get more into review, because I want to say New Rockstars I didn't get a chance to watch today, but I just happened to see it on my YouTube timeline. They did a comparison since the mid-season trailer dropped, which I haven't watched because I don't want to be spoiled at all.
Nope. Not into.
Yeah, but they were saying that there were some scenes that were in the mid-season trailer that dropped today,
right,
that we saw that apparently was in some of the earlier trailers for the season.
But
that's that. I'm just saying. I don't know, because I didn't watch it, so I'm just messages out there on the internet about it. So
okay, I know that the mid-season trailer has scenes that are from the next few episodes.
Yeah.
But I guess my takeaway from what you're saying is that your understanding is it also includes scenes from the original trailers that weren't scenes from the first 4 episodes.
Correct.
Okay, so obviously, because me and Will are kind of anti-trailers, we can't go out and confirm this stuff, because one thing will lead to another. But it sounds like I heard one thing and you heard a different thing, so now there's conflicting notes. So yep. I'm just glad, heck, I stopped watching the first trailer. I don't want to know. But at that, so it's this episode. I don't think I'm as high on it as you are and other people are on it, just because my expectations were so freaking high. I was even listening to some reviews and a reaction before we started recording tonight, And I was thinking about it as I was hearing some of the scenes play out. And I think everything up until the end, like, don't get me wrong, this show is well written and everything. Yeah. But it's also, for whatever reason, I still lean heavily towards season 1, as I liked a lot better. And there was just something about the way the writing here where a lot of it feels on the nose, like too on the nose for me, like on the nose where I'm like, oh, that's cool. But also I'm like, I could have written that. Like, I'm like, I don't know how clever you're being. It's a bit like, even though I like the scene with Sylvie and Loki, but the moment she says, like, we're playing gods, it sounds like we're playing gods. I'm thinking already in my mind, you are gods. And Loki says that. Yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. But I wish it was something more interesting that I couldn't have thought of 5 seconds earlier.
I thought the same thing too when I was watching that scene.
Yeah, it's just, and again, like, even though I avoid trailers, I'm mad that I heard some of the things about, or my expectations for what episode 4 would give me were raised when I started hearing so many people's reactions because people had watched the first 4 episodes. And I'm just like, well, if you're saying this is the best episode of television you've seen in a while, I'm like, that's setting the bar pretty high, especially this year where we've talked at length about all of the good TV that has come out in this year alone.
Yeah. Well, see, I think to your point about people raising expectations or lowering expectations, I listened to reviewers and stuff and other people talk about this show and even our conversations about it. And for me, I just basically decided to like take it one at a time because especially after one particular, I think it was Harloff who was like bagging on the second episode with the product placement stuff. And then once I actually watched the episode, I was like, are we watching this? I mean, it didn't seem to take anything away from it. So, so for me, it wasn't so that, that didn't color my viewing of the show because I watched it the first time Friday and I watched it again last night. And I agree with you that there were some things that were telegraphed, like the line, we are gods. And I completely get that. And I thought whenever I was watching it Friday, I was thinking the same. I was like, I know where this line is going. But I think for me, it's more just the overall structure of how they're closing loops in this story. And, because whenever, for example, getting, thinking, starting at the beginning of the episode where we're at the end of time and of course Miss Minutes shares to Ravonna the thing that's gonna just make her very angry and of course, yes, we figured it was going to be a betrayal of some sort, and indeed it was. And but also where it paid off for me was how we got that snippet of that conversation that He Who Remains and Ravonna had in episode 1, and then they flesh it out in this episode. So for me, it was just like completing that arc. And then of course gives us some greater understanding for why now Ravonna is on the mission that she's on.
Yeah. I go back and forth on that scene. Like I already said it last week that if it turns out the secret is he wiped her mind. I'm like, okay. Been there, heard that, sob story, so sad. But I also understand how, well, it wasn't just that he wiped her mind, but she was his commander and helped him so much. But he didn't just wipe her mind, he wiped a lot of people's minds. So you could make an argument that like, they still haven't convinced me that she is more hurt by his actions than, say, Mobius, than, say, any of the people who have clearly been held hostage at the TVA, through the memory erasing, through the here's your purpose. And like, if you really start to think about it, He Who Remains is doing with the TVA and the people who have been working for the TVA exactly what Wanda was doing to that town.
Yeah. There are a lot of parallels. Yeah.
Holding them hostage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, you're right. That's a great parallel between those two, between the two shows and the two characters, because it is that case. And I think to drop, to echo that point and tie it to another point in this episode too, like when we get Doc's whenever Brad, whenever they have the whole C section there where they figures out Brad betrayed them and everything, and then where Ravonna and Miss Minutes show up and she is presented the choice to join Ravonna and being a part of her new TVA. She rejected that because she's like, she's already lost her free will and other things before by being subjected to a megalomaniac and He Who Remains. So why am I going to do it again?
Yeah. It's when you bring up that scene, all that I think about is it's a very small box.
Yeah.
I like you're right that I was surprised that only Brad, but I'm also not, because like Docs and crew were very proactively trying to get rid of the timelines, because having all of these branches, they knew like it was chaos. It's like the TVA is collapsing, and because Loki and them stopped their plan to save the timelines, like now we're in this situation. And I think it also is very true to Docs and the others for not having them follow Brad, because Brad's the only one who really did has seen what's on the other side and is thinking to himself, like, he's more at looking at it from, I was robbed. I know that I can just as easily go back, so why not? Why do I have to stay here and live out this life that I had no choice over?
Right.
So they're doing very interesting things there that I wasn't expecting. And heck, I wasn't even expecting Brad to make it this long, but Rafael Castell is doing great, and I hope he's in it for the long haul. he's very good, especially when Sylvie possessed his body. And I was like, you go, Brad, good on you. But I like how I refer to him as Brad, no matter what. Like, he'll never be X5 to me. It's me, Brad.
He's always Brad. Yep, he is Brad. Brad Wolf. That is it. But I think that's part of the point. I mean, I think, as you said, he was the one who made that choice because he had been on the other side, and he liked what he saw. And
the others are basically pulling a Mobius. They're not looking. They and I think I'm curious in the next two episodes how they're gonna tie up that thread of Mobius and the others and their lives on the timeline, or their refusal to look is also, from my perspective, a mechanism of thinking, this is the life I've only ever known. So if I go look, well, then I'm going to think, well, why can't I? Like, there's too many possibilities. So, and that can cause people anxiety. So maybe it's more like, I don't care what my life is there. I know what my life is here, and I'm going to see it through. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that. I mean, I thought about that actually as I was making my notes for tonight and thinking ahead as far as what we're going to see in episodes 5 and 6. I'm glad they purposefully did not show what Mobius's life was before. You know, we know Ravonna, for example, was a teacher. We know Brad had his life as a as an actor in the 70s and all that kind of stuff. But I think whatever reset happens after this fade to black cliffhanger at the end of this episode, I think we're going to get some answers to what Mobius's life was on the sacred timeline or one of the branches.
It's gotta be something with jet skis, right?
And it's going to be something with jet skis and something with and of course it's got to have some hot cocoa there too.
Well, that was an interesting choice. Like, that was random to me because there's been so much emphasis on pie, the key lime pie. And I was actually thinking to myself during this episode, I'm just sitting there watching the whole pie scene and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so the ending of this episode, there's definitely going to be a callback to pie, right?
Yeah.
But then we went on this cocoa tangent and which was weird because you're like, why is he so like, I'm mad. I'm more mad that Timely didn't save the day, died within 5 seconds. And so therefore we might never understand why he was so obsessed with the cocoa machine.
Well, I think it was just the curiosity of the inventor with the cocoa machine. Yeah.
But he knows he was the inventor.
Yeah, he might have been the inventor.
Yeah, I get it. It was also just in a very creepy location. I'm going to call it out right now.
Well, it's funny because, it was. Because, when I rewatched the episode, I noticed, because I noticed the placement of it when they panned out, that coffee machine, that machine was like there. So what's the significance of that machine?
Yeah. That cocoa machine that I swear, I mean, people, if you know different, please let us know. But I swear that's the first time in this episode we've heard about the cocoa machine. And the only reason why the cocoa machine came up is because Sylvie slammed Mobius for wanting to go get pie. Slammed him real hard.
Very hard.
And then she went to go get pie, but didn't get it pie.
Did not get the
Yeah, and the one person, like, shout out to Loki. The man is just staying cool and calm right now. And I did hear someone bring up an interesting point that potentially this could be where it's going, is Loki's on a path that's very similar to Tony Stark's path.
I've heard that too, yeah.
Yeah, which at this rate, let's do it. Let's go all the way because just it will make sense. And he does need, at this point, we need some femininity with his ending. Whatever it is. Like we need him to redeem himself, get killed in the process, and all the different journeys be worth it.
Well, maybe this variant actually lives to see another day. Maybe that's the end game with this version of Loki. I mean, or maybe he becomes, to become that, that version of Tony Stark. I mean, it could go one of two ways. He could definitely have the same fate as Tony. But that would be the same fate of all the other Lokis. Or he could, or I guess I should say the movie Loki, to separate the two. Or he could become, given the God's speech, he could become the next, he who remains as far as the architect of the rebuilt TVA after we have this reset.
Yeah. One thing that did stick out to me about the the pie scene, as I'm calling it right now, is and actually this entire episode is even though I didn't like the line because it was predictable, I do think that in this episode alone, they have done a really good job of taking these gods and putting them in the situation that makes sense of why they're behaving like mortals. There's so much morality going on, where it's not them able to use their magic and get their ways, and it's not them able to like burn it all down and everything. No, they actually have to have hope that these other people are figuring it out and it's all going to be okay. And so it felt very much like both of them, both Sylvie and Loki, were faced with their own morality. And it made them, and that's what I really like that this show has managed to do throughout both seasons, is really strip away this idea that you are a god and make you just another mortal, which they've never done with Thor before, in my opinion. So I really like that, and that's what places this in a very unique time.
See what you did there. Yeah, but
I have to do it because they do it every 5 minutes. Okay,
they do.
Time puns, get it? Oh my god!
Time puns, the callbacks to other time travel stories. Gosh, Obi and his not to scale models.
Oh my god.
But the pie scene, I completely agree that the mortality and morality of being, of gods having to face this choice. And it's funny how, with this philosophical debate and Loki being basically placed in the role of what ironically he who remains was trying to do with the TVA to begin with. You're right. I mean, it definitely does take this series. This is, like to your point that you made about the parallels between WandaVision. This is the same. This series is also like that as well, where Wanda was a really exploration of grief. This is an exploration of mortality and choice and predestination.
Right. So in terms of predestination.
Yeah.
And in terms of, I think you said something along the lines at the very start of this conversation that this episode, it closes a lot of loops.
Yeah.
When you say that, are you saying that they're closing loops for the better or for the worse? Like, what do you mean by that it's closing a lot of loops?
Well, I think there are a couple of levels. One, the story loops, as far as we were teased something in the first episode, and now we got resolution to at least a portion of the story in this fourth one. There's still, for example, as we referenced earlier, the conversation that Ravonna and he had, there's still some things I'm thinking that the whole time slipping that Loki was doing before in the first episode, even though it seemed that they resolved it, I'm thinking that it's going to play a role in the 5th and 6th episodes.
Right. Because we still don't know why that even ever happened.
Exactly. So I think that's still something that's at play. And then of course the other big one is just, and even to your point about how they just we're just putting fine points on everything, the Ouroboros of it all. And, right. and for those folks in the audience who may not understand the dictionary definition of what an Ouroboros is, they gave it right to them. So,
yeah. Yeah, I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you're so clever. Got it. Moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I did like, but that was a fun scene, and again, it was just really, from from an acting standpoint of Ki-hoo and Jonathan Majors. I mean, it was just a fun scene to watch, but it did get to the bigger, the old thing. What came first, the chicken or the egg? And so they're playing on that whole thing in this show as well. So, so I think in episode 5 and 6, we'll get some resolution to some things, but of course, given that it is Marvel, it'll definitely be a springboard to many more things, including the multiversal war.
Right. So do you think the event in this episode is what causes Loki to start time slipping in the first episode?
It might be. It might very well be.
Okay.
Because I think, because we have, the loom. I guess the thing is, the whole purpose of the loom was, you have this sacred timeline, and the loom is the use all the technobabble, the throughput multiplier or whatever. I mean, basically, it was just, you have in this universe, you have the sacred timeline, and then you just have all these branches that have spun off from that sacred timeline, and the loom was just basically pulling them all back together.
Right.
So I think that time slipping has something to do with pulling all those threads back together into a single unified timeline.
Right.
I don't know what, but I mean,
no, like we don't, because they've done a very good job about teasing stuff. But definitely, I don't think they've given us enough information for anybody to come out with like some really clear theories.
Yeah.
I'm sure people are theory spiraling, but I just keep thinking about the fact that it was in the season 1 finale, Loki gets kicked through the time door.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final scene plays out, and we all think that he's in the future. Mm-hmm. Or no, we all think that he's in present day, but then they do the whole Planet of the Apes scene.
Right.
And we're like, "Oh no, he's in the future," or we don't know.
We don't know. That could be in the past, because because you're right, because when we start the second season, we have different places on the timeline with OB.
Right. Yeah.
Because due to the time slipping.
Right, but I don't. Okay, so he gets kicked through the door, ends up in one place. Then we start in season 2, and that's when the time slipping occurs. But theoretically, the more I think about it, the more it couldn't have been this event.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it was when He Who Remains died.
Yeah. Yeah. That probably wasn't true. Yeah. Yeah. Because that makes sense.
Why did it only affect Loki and not Sylvie?
Well, it's because she remained at the end of time.
Yeah, and she killed him after he was already kicked through the door. So maybe they're connected, but it's gonna always. I feel like the loop of this season is always gonna tie back to that scene at the end of the first season, though.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that was the catalyst that set all the whole the branches in motion.
Right, and even with that, even with the branches in motion, for it to escalate this quickly, I don't know if they've done enough. I don't know if they've done a good enough job setting the rules of why that is. Like, why I get he was. Maybe it's because no one's writing the timeline. Like, the loom can only do so much, but I don't know. It's interesting to think about. I'm glad we don't have to spend too much time thinking about it before we start getting answers with the next episode dropping later this week. Yeah. But yeah, I find it very interesting when we go on these, let's watch these 2 episodes as they come, or these 2 shows as they come out. And it never ceases to amaze me, no matter how different the shows can be, how many parallels we can find them. Because right when we were able to watch Loki episode 4, and with this like, well, what the fuck do they do now? Yeah. And they got 2 more episodes. We're watching Gen V that has its penultimate episode, where I feel like they tied everything up, and I'm like, we got 1 more episode left. Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
That's all I could think about it after watching like both Gen V and Loki. I'm like, well, go figure. Both of you did the same thing to me.
Yeah, I was thinking that same thing when I was watching the end of episode 7, and we haven't even, I know we were also going to touch on episode 6 as well, but you're right. I mean, given that, that they did happen and occur in the same week, it was just like, okay, all right, showrunners. Yeah, I see that. I know y'all didn't plan it this way, but how about that?
How about that?
Yeah.
So we will definitely be talking a lot about Loki and its next episode next week, along with the Gen V season finale, as it was confirmed a few weeks ago. I think even that season 2 will be happening, which, I finally went back and listened to Christian, Coy, and Winston talk about Loki episode 4. Okay. And you know what they talked about towards the very end of that? They talked about
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to listen to it. I was going to this weekend, but never got the opportunity to.
Yeah. I like fast forward through some of it. I found it very interesting how little they actually talked about episode 4 of Loki, probably because both Christian and Winston had seen it weeks ago.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah, but then I was very intrigued when they started talking about Gen V. And please, everyone listening, if you're sleeping on Gen V, wake the heck up, because this show is good. It is good. Sure. Yeah. It is exactly what you want a spinoff to be. Mm-hmm. It is not a derivative of the main show, of the original show. It is a living, breathing story that is just so happens to occur in the exact same universe. So you're playing by all the same rules. Yep. and it's also like, I don't know the writing situation, but to me, there might be 2 different writing staffs. There may be 1, but it says a lot, the fact that I can't really tell too much of a difference between the writing. Because there's just something about the tone of Gen V that every 5 minutes I'm like, well, so what? We see a penis here. We see, like, there's a dick joke there. There's this, there's that. There's Jensen Ackles, which I read, that was all improvised. His entire scene was all improvised, talking about teaching Kate how to come, and everything he said was improvised, and all I could think about is, you are the father of 2 little girls.
Yeah, I have to say, so with episode 6 Jumanji, I saw, given that we started Gen V, I think a week back from the original air dates, and I know we're now caught up, but I did see, I saw Soldier Boy. Mm-hmm. So I knew Soldier Boy was going to be in this episode, but damn, how they used Soldier Boy, an inappropriately aged ex-boyfriend, imaginary friend, who was teaching her all about sexuality, among other things. I did not have that on my 2023 bingo card for sure.
No, I had heard the same thing because I had read this like back when the episode first aired, and I'm like, oh, but I'd forgotten about it. And then as soon as he comes up, all I'm thinking about is how this is all improvised and it's just gold. It's just so good. And it makes sense. And I love in this episode, we talked a lot about Kate, and we talked a lot about Andre, and how Jumanji really keyed in into both of those characters and their situations. And I'm gonna say it right now, like this episode, in my opinion, makes Kate like a Jean Grey character. And Andre's like a Cyclops.
Interesting.
Like there's something about it. Maybe it's because like I know Jean Grey didn't wear the gloves. Well, I think she did, but I know Rogue is more known for her gloves because of her powers. That like if you combine Jean Grey and Rogue powers, that's basically Kate. Because she can get inside your head, and as we saw in Jumanji, why it's called Jumanji is because they took the premise of that movie game and made it and turned it into a bottle episode inside Kate's heads, where because of her powers and what was happening, what was causing, how do I put this, how her powers were wreaking havoc in her mind and kind of malfunctioning as she was bringing everyone's memory back. She inadvertently brings everyone inside her head. And at first, we're like, okay, this is going to be a Kate memory tour. And then very quickly, all of a sudden, we get other things. And the first one was when they were in class and we saw Kate meet Golden Boy, and then Golden Boy quickly starts interacting, and boy, what was not on my bingo card, it should have been, was that Andre and Kate were hooking up way before. Which, looking back, I'm like, yeah, there was something way too easy about that for them to not have been fucking before. It's just but I was also I liked how Jordan was so taken aback by that, because they had been around, both of them and Golden Boy, for so long. It's like, how did I not know this? What was going on? And so we're like, okay, so it's their memory. And then we randomly find ourselves in a Jordan memory. Which at first they played it very well, because at first you're thinking, oh, we're going to see, at first I'm like, wait, we're going to see what Briggs and Golden Boy were talking about during the end of the first episode.
Right.
And then quickly it's like, no, this is Jordan's memory. And it wasn't even that instance. They have, Golden Boy, Luke, has been catching on to this whole situation with him and Sam and what was happening in the woods since their freshman year. So this was long before, and unfortunately the memory is from Jordan, because they essentially put Luke to sleep and then were rewarded for that by becoming Brink's TA.
Put Luke to sleep. And then of course they were using, basically, I guess, using Sam as the test subject on Luke to like make Luke stronger. And so there was that whole thing, but then also the whole, like you noted in the notes, the question of the loyalty was, whether it was right or wrong, Jordan's motivations for doing it, it was that misplaced parental figure because of, the estrangement that Jordan has with their father.
Yeah. I think that what this episode did with everything that came out about each character and their histories, what it did a good job doing is it better informed us about why these characters made certain choices in all of the previous episodes.
Yep.
Like it shed in some of that history and some of that context that we honestly didn't even know we were missing. But now that we have it, it's like, okay, now I get it. I understand why out of everyone, Jordan was grieving the most, not over Golden Boy, but over Briggs. Yeah. And why the fact that they're gone, they're even more vulnerable but there's a lot of guilt too, about, and now seeing and understanding more about the school and what their choices have allowed to happen. It's like, there's even more guilt, and it makes a lot more sense about Andre and all of the different emotions he's feeling. And also, I think the episode did continue to enforce what you brought up last week about the tragedy that has occurred with Andre and with a lot of his relationships with a lot of different characters, but especially Kate and Golden Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with Kate, like, yeah, she I hope nobody misinterpreted my stance last week. But you understand, like, we see her after what happened to her after she sent her brother away.
Yeah.
And the cruelty that she was exposed to, and why freaking Shetty is able to do this manipulation to these kids, because she knows it. She knows the tragedy, and she knows how to say the right things to get these kids to trust her. And suddenly she's allowed to be the mother figure that didn't want them, and step into that role.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely be talking about Shetty later.
Yeah, Shetty's a shitty person, but
yeah. Well, is she? I mean, think about it. In this of the world, she's not a Homelander. Like,
Well, let's true. We'll put a pin in it, but at least in this episode, just seeing that, even though we later learn the motivations, just the manipulation and just how she used the kids, I think.
Yeah.
It does beg the question: does the ends justify the means? With Shetty, and I think that's to your point about why this show and even the boys work so well, really gets into that.
Yeah, she definitely, yeah. We'll get into Shetty a little bit later. We also go back to the bloody death that kicked off this entire series, and Marie and Annabelle, which I don't know. And it's not Annabelle, it's Annabeth, right?
Yeah,
Annabelle or Annabeth? It's Annabeth.
Yeah.
So, which we already knew, but they just wanted Annabeth there, and it didn't feel, to me, Marie's situation felt more like a nightmare.
Yeah.
just like her worst fear of how her sister, but then again, it could have been because we only saw so much of what happened in the first episode. But just very well. I really liked watching both of these episodes together, because even though Jumanji felt very much like a bottle episode, it definitely did a good job of taking us from where we left off with last week and the reveal that it was Kate to to understanding more about why she was doing what she was doing, even though we knew like Shetty was involved, we didn't know the extent, we didn't know the history, we didn't really, we're still fleshing out the woods in that situation. But by the end of the episode, we also get the resolution. Okay, so Cordoza suddenly has a breakthrough with his virus. But it's not enough that he can infect and kill these metas, but can you make it contagious? So that's how they ended the episode.
Yeah. That was, and it's interesting that we learn more about this virus, because I know it was teased, I want to say, in season 3 of The Boys, maybe. But this show was conceived of and written after the pandemic. And it's kind of like, it's interesting that it still decided to go this route, given what we've all been dealing with. Because I know Falcon and Winter Soldier on the Marvel side had a similar type of story arc, but decided not to. But The Boys and Gen V universe decided to continue on this, and this is a very interesting story choice, that especially when we get to episode 7 and the resolution there. I wonder if that's how they're decided to handle it. But episode 6, I mean, I was just thinking about Andre when they did pull out of the out of Kate's memory and stuff, and again, it just made it very clear that he still, even though with all that happens, he still has feelings for her, but all the members of the Gen V Scooby-Doo gang definitely don't trust her, which, again, as you said, watching these 2 episodes together definitely drives some things forward with the story that will bear something to bear in mind as we move forward. And then, of course, we didn't really talk much about Emma and Sam. Obviously, Sam had his first experience. He's a virgin with Emma. But the bigger thing that I thought about that scene was where he says, after they're talking, and he's like, he still has this thing of that he doesn't deserve her, and the fact that she still is like, look, you're messed up, I messed up, we're messed up together, and she didn't pull away, which I think thinking ahead, given Sam's mental state, how is that going to play out with their relationship, and also just things I think it's maybe a good segue to move to episode 7. So. Yeah. Which was called Sick, and I was thinking about Sam and Emma. Sam is there in the dorm and wants to stay there, and of course, but it is a college campus, and he got a little taste of college life. From the Homelander Stan himself.
Yeah. What you were getting at is that well, in my opinion, I don't necessarily know if it's going to be Sam's mental illness that causes Emma to leave him or break up with him, but now that we're out of the hiding spot, suddenly you see the true colors of a person, and because of Sam's history, he is definitely on Team Homelander. So he definitely thinks that soups are superior, and humans mortals should be bowing down to them, which Emma does not seem to agree with, and so they will definitely be having a conversation about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I liked, because it was so subtle. All of those, like, where you're like, okay, and they're also, the writers are saying, yeah, we're gonna start these hints now, so that it makes sense, and also they've done a good job with Sam in particular, with as much time as we've had with him, about us. I don't think it's from left field that he would feel that way.
No.
Based on everything he's been through.
Yeah.
And I think any meta who went through that, or any soup that went through that, would probably come out feeling the exact same way. And that's probably why Homelander feels, that's a part of why Homelander feels the way he does about it. Is because there's been allusions to what he went through, especially as a child, basically being raised like as a lab rat. So, I like it. And it also broadens the perspective. It widens how many different perspectives in this crazy world that we're getting through these kids, or young adults, whatever you want to call them. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't like, Emma and Sam have had so much time that to me, I was like, okay, they can play. I see what they're doing, but they're definitely not the A storyline right now.
No.
No, because these 2 episodes are all about Shetty. Shetty, especially in Sick, everything escalates. And this is the penultimate episode, and so you're not thinking, you're thinking, okay, this is a build up, but the very first scene where Cardoza is asked to make the virus airborne, and that, I like how that triggers him to question Shetty and say, oh, wait, what? And then she immediately points out the fact that he has nowhere to go with this information, because he literally created a virus that will kill soups. And my whole thing is, while you were doing this, like at what point did you pull out a memo from Vought saying, this is my directive, kill them? Like I don't understand.
Yeah, it's just like, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of like the equivalent. It's like, I mean, it's just like the accidental discovery. I can't remember this of the thing that will bring the corporation down, and he's like the hapless scientist who discovered it. Yeah.
Poor guy. Heads will roll.
Literally,
I love that song, and I'm so glad they used it.
They did. I have to say, I know we don't talk much about the scoring with this show, hardly at all, but I have to say, the score of this show is so on point.
Yeah, it's a good soundtrack.
Yeah.
And then Dean Shetty meets up with Grace Mallory, who we know from The Boys, and so it's a good cameo from her, who gets, because of what she's known for and who she's affiliated with, she gets shown this plan of basically genocide, and she's like, no. Pass.
Yeah.
And also, we're watching you because this is freaking crazy.
Yeah.
So I do want to say, it is kind of like, okay, like Shetty was all calm, cool, collected, and then the moment she realizes what she has, it's like, okay, pedal to the metal, let's get this out. Which, so before, when you were talking about Shetty being real shitty, we find out the motivation, and the motivation, like, again, this is why this is so brilliant, is because it's all tied back to the airplane crash in the first season. And why I think that's brilliant is because I remember still watching that episode.
Me too.
And it was that episode which told me as a viewer, this show is different. And I think it was, I remember
us talking about it. Yeah.
What episode was it though? Was it
episode 4?
I was going to say episode 4. And And so it wasn't the first episode. It took a while for us to figure out what this was doing, and then that episode happened. So the fact that they go all the way back to not only the first season of The Boys, but that specific event that honestly I think a lot of viewers reflect on and being like, that was the changing point. Like, I'm committed now to this universe. To have that be the motivation for your antagonist in the first season of the spin-off show. I'm clapping right now, everyone. I'm just round of freaking applause.
Yeah. Cue the Captain Picard meme.
Oh man, yeah. I just because it's just so good. It's so good that happened the way it did, and we find out about it. And just as quickly as Shetty's plan starts getting kicked into full gear, they strip it out, take it all away. And so here's my question to you, Will.
Yeah.
When we see the scene of Kate and Shetty at the house, Kate has her gloves off. And then by the end of that scene, she's kind of like, Shetty is like petting her head and saying, I'm going to protect you. Did you think that it worked? That Kate was being manipulated again by Shetty?
So that goes back to my comment earlier about the end of episode 6 with everybody not trusting everyone. Because now, me as a viewer, I really don't know.
Yeah.
I honestly, I was like, because when that all played out, when the rest of the gang did show up at the house, I was sitting there, I was so conflicted. Like, is this all of Shetty's game to like get, and that she and Kate plotted this out and all, or is it something more? And I think, and taking it to the next step, I know we haven't gotten through just wanted to start thinking ahead to next week, but I mean, this makes Kate a very dangerous individual.
Oh,
moving forward,
Jean Grey.
Moving forward Phoenix. In the show.
Jean Grey, Phoenix. Yep.
Yeah, because I just don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah. And hey, Emma might have to be careful because Kate shares the same political perspective as Sam.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But again, Jumanji kind of informed you that Kate has been used. Like, not as much as Sam, but like emotionally, yes. And her powers, and especially the fact that her powers cause her own issues with her head and everything. Like, there's ramifications for overuse and the way they were using her. Yeah. No, very dangerous. But I like it because these kids can't all be the good guys. But I also, there is love there. There is friendship there that they are navigating a very precarious situation with this because some of them share really long histories. Some of them are new, but also identify with each other due to their own personal tragedies. And so they've done a very good job of making us believe that these are friends. These are lovers. But they're also freaking powerful, and they can't always be trusted because at the end of the day, people are they're still young enough to just look out for themselves. So it's very interesting, but in that moment, so where and the great point, I didn't think about it in that way, but yes, the writers in Jumanji set it up so you as a viewer we're on the fence about, okay, is Shetty in control in this situation or is Kate? And nope, Kate is definitely in control. Gloves are off.
Gloves are off, literally, yeah.
Shetty just slits her own throat. But what I did not see coming was to take it one step further. It wasn't enough for Shetty to slit her own throat. Nope, because we got Marie around. Mm-hmm. And so Kate prevents her from helping. And beautiful acting by the actress who plays Marie, and asking for, just let me. You gotta just let me do this. And it was like, nope. I mean, actually, from both of them, like that was so done, because you could see it from both of their perspectives, the pain that was going on.
Yeah, that was a powerful scene, and because especially when they were like intercut the Shetty and Marie's mother, and everything about that scene. And again, but even so, and even though you're right, I think Kate is in control at that point, and why it makes Kate really furthers my point why Kate is so dangerous is because that power that she has. I mean, she can control and warp minds, and we've seen, they've sprinkled all throughout the season how it can be utilized. Mm-hmm. But then when we see it fully manifest itself, and she's now off the pills that Brink and Shetty were giving her to keep her somewhat under, compassionate control, to use Cardozo's term. Now it's just like, oh fuck. I mean, all bets are off now. And especially as we know, with Newman being on campus and the MAGA soups, factions, are clearly, we know where they stand, and now potentially have another powerful individual in Sam on their team, because because they set it up well with the bonding there in the dorm, but then when they get to the rally, I guess the candidate forum there in the student union, and the students start sharing, that one student makes the point, we're superior. And like you said, I mean, that resonates with Sam because of what he's been through. So, I mean, all bets are off as far as we move forward.
Yeah. To go back to Newman and probably the last point really of this episode for me is, this is the Newman episode where we see her cameo. We called it last week, spot on. She was the benefactor that's revealed, and it's because of her similarities with Marie, where we learn something more about Marie's powers, and that she's able to sense Gen V in people's blood. So she's able to figure out pretty quickly that Newman herself has Gen V in her blood. And I like what they're doing with the power set of Marie, because we still don't know fully what the extent of her powers are. Mm-hmm. And she definitely is given the powers to both save and kill people, to play God. Go figure. Mm-hmm. And also I'm just going to point it out, because I always point it out. We still don't know the extent of Jordan's powers.
We don't.
Clarification there too. Thank you. Yep. But we get Newman. We get a great scene between them. Finally, an adult we can somewhat trust.
Somewhat.
You can only trust, like trusting characters and people within this universe. Always been a challenge. Always. But we accept them, because at the end of the day, Newman does take the information, believes the information, and ends up getting a hold of Cardoza, and who, I mean, it makes sense. The guy was naive enough to create the virus. He would be naive enough to be like, I can turn this over to you and you're just going to let me go.
Yeah.
I like especially the line, and you're the only person who can recreate this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And you think you're going to live?
Yeah. So, I was literally holding, as I knew where this was as the scene was going, and I was just like, okay, I just kept putting my hands over my eyes.
I think I might have even said your head will roll like before the song started playing. I was just like, his head is gonna come right off. It's gonna come right off. But that was the ending of the episode, and that is why this ending and the ending of Loki episode 4 is like so parallels one another, because for in terms of this season, we've wrapped a lot of stuff up. I mean, the virus is in Newman's hands. Like, what's remaining of it? We know what the woods are, but so now I can only imagine with episode 8, it's gonna be, oh, you think we wrapped everything up, but we left these threads, and you'll find out where they go next season. Yeah. Like they're and set up for next season. So I like this approach of, instead of dividing your season finale into wrapping things up, here's an epilogue and preview for the next season, we're going to do that in the penultimate, and then the full last episode is just going to be a big tease for the next season.
Yeah. And also the penultimate, like, you know, clearly sets up some things for The Boys season 4, like, you know, with Newman, you know, having this virus, and we know Newman and her relationship with Homelander, as far as, you know, how antagonistic they are, and also now she has a +1 that she can use, and with the powers, and, you know, thinking about, and you're right. I mean, the episode, thinking about going back to Marie and Newman real fast, and how it kind of sets things up too. And one of the things I thought about with this show, and is, you know, it's set on the college campus. It's young, you know, you have the idealism of youth with these characters, and how your worldview at that point is completely more idealistic, more maybe utopian, but as we've seen, as these characters have gone through this season, we're seeing how they are now, you know, getting more like the Boys characters, where they're, you know, more jaded, more cynical because of the shit that they've been through. And so, you know, so these shows really do complement each other very, very well, in that regard. And especially with Newman and Marie's speech, you know, really coloring that, because Marie was like thinking, you know, I have the secret about this virus, and I can use it, and, you know, I have a platform. And Newman was like, no. Where your power comes is being the first Black woman in the 7, and having that type of platform, and you know, and it's that cynical nature of, like, utilization of power, you know, in this case, to better, you know, make sure that the Supes do continue to have their supremacy. So it's just very, very smart the way that they, you know, because, you know, the Sams and the Rufuses of the world think it's just, you know, it's the blunt force of power, the Homelander way, you know, just cutting, you know, sawing someone down, or letting the plane crash like that he did.
Yeah.
Newman's, Newman's more surgical with it, and I just really like the way that they're setting that up, and they really, you know, Newman's speech to Marie really drives that point home. You know, you can be blunt force with it, or you can be very surgical with it, and I thought that was, I really liked. I thought that was a really powerful moment, the way the episode ended.
Yeah, and just to point out, the 3 characters, Sam, Rufus, and Homelander, are all white males. Yep. And then Newman and Marie are minority females. So, and we're not, like, it amazes me that with both of these shows, when we're talking powers, some of these characters have powers. Yeah. But it's not necessarily that power we're always talking about. It's the political power. It's the leverage of, I have this to make you do what I want. It's leverage. It's different than just talking about people with powers and superheroes. So it is just so well written. Again, I would love to know if it's one writing room for both shows, two writing rooms who just so happen to like mind meld every day, because I can't tell the difference. If they switch, they're like, you're going to write this show and I'll write this show. Got it? Cool. And then Tuesday we'll go back. It's like the viewers can't tell, which just says so much, and is why people have said that this is arguably the best shared universe we've seen, is because they're going at the same level, and it's so consistent. So shout out to them. Very happy that they're getting season 2. Well deserved.
That's definitely shout out to, like I said, to the writers room, Eric Kripke, showrunner for both. Chef's Kiss, great season. And I have no doubt that the finale is going to stick the landing, but also, we may be like one of Newman's victims here and have our minds and heads blown off.
And also on that note about Eric Kripke, some people are saying like Gen V intentionally has moments of being written like a CW show. Okay, the guy comes from Supernatural. Creator and main writer of Supernatural, like first 5 seasons. So 1 + 1 = 2. I hope people understand that. Supernatural, very popular, very long running show on the CW. Thank you very much. One more thing before we sign off for tonight. We have to talk about it and just mention it, but our condolences and hearts go out to Matthew Perry's family and friends as the actor died over the weekend due to a drowning. And this was very sad. It hit me, but it was weird because I am a huge fan of Friends. Like, Friends was airing when I was really young. I honestly really got into it when I was a teenager, and it was just always on reruns. I own all 10 seasons on DVD. I have, it was to a point in my high school years where me and my best friends, we would have conversations, and I want to say 90% of the context were just quotes from Friends. Obsessed with the show. So it was really sad to hear about this, and to then be just inundated with all of the montages of Friends.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And it's just sad. Very young, 54, and I believe 54, right? I'm right about that. Yeah, 54. But it's a sad loss, and we all know he struggled with other stuff, but we hope at least he's at peace. So
definitely. I can't really add great sentiments there. Can't really add anything more, but definitely was a very talented individual, and he will be missed.
Yep. And on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Will M. Polk, WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me there as well at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at SNN. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Threads at scene_N_nerd. And visit our website, www.scenenerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.